So, anybody have anything? Yes, Mr. Walker.
Ladies and gentlemen,
If you don't mind, could you pull that down, just because I don't think it's picking you up, sir.
you hear that? I am on the CRA advisory board, okay? But in that position, we do not get involved with the budget per se. We are, and according to the notes here, dealing with the projects, taking a look at them and see them. And sometimes at the meetings, I have to leave my seat and go outside and speak as a citizen. That's what I'm here for tonight, okay? And looking at this, the budget itself, I have one or two questions. One question is the trust fund. How much is left in it now? That's number one. Another question is, where is it? Okay. Another question is,
When you say where is it, do you mean like what banks?
yeah,
Parked at?
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And who has control of that? Like, for example, signs the checks. Would it have been, for example, the previous city manager? Did he have permission to sign the checks for that? And was that information forwarded on to the FBI? But I don't want to go down that route, okay? What you're looking at here right now, here in the total CRA revenues for last year was 505, 174. This year, 615, 739. That is derived out of TIF. There's two forms of TIF there, one from Bay County and one from the city of Lynn Haven. That means our TIF goes into the pot. Where does Bay County have to pay TIF for our CRA?
You're asking why do they?
Why?
Well, Mr. Henke, would you like to explain?
The reason I asked that question, somebody else asked me it too. I couldn't answer it.
It's regulated in the Florida statute. So the tax increment financing applies to most of the taxing authorities except the school district, school district, water management district, and there's a third one that it doesn't apply to. But everybody else, Bay County, city, and the mosquito control districts, and the health departments, they all fall under. They all have to pay into the CRA funds, the trust fund.
Yeah, I got that. But the TIF is based on increments over a frozen
Property tax value.
Right. Well, Bay County doesn't have any of our CRA.
Oh, yeah, they collect taxes inside the CRA, yes, sir. Bay County collects property taxes on every parcel in Bay County.
Okay, in Bay County.
Yes, sir.
That's the answer to my question. Thank you. All right. Now you're looking at 615, 739 as your total CRA revenues, and in there it says cash carry forward. Down below, your total CRA expenditures for next year is going to be 615, 739. But your income is only 207,052. That means, correction, your income is, let's say it says 615, but that broken down with cash carry forward. The cash carry forward, is that the trust fund?
Mr. Jenkins.
It's a portion of the trust fund. And maybe just to give an example, let's say we call the trust fund our savings account. And for the next fiscal year, we anticipate some revenue, some money coming into our checking account from the city in the amount of $176,500, from the county $231,000. However, the projects that we have lined up, they require some more money. So the money that comes into our checking account wouldn't cover the anticipated expenses. Therefore, we're going into the trust fund and to cover the difference. And that's the $207,000. It's $207,052. There's still some money left in the trust fund, and I would have to look into my records right now how much is in there.
That's my next question.
But You probably remember this, it was over $1 million that we had in the trust fund. But we have been working on a lot of big projects, the CHE at Sheffield Park and other, sidewalk projects. So we've been using a lot of that money too.
The next question is, when does our CRA sunset?
I don't know that answer.
2033.
2033. Okay, a couple of years ago, we went in and got incorporated and involved with Fuel Depot. And then we spent $60,000 of our CRA money to enlarge that CRA to incorporate the Fuel Depot. With that, we were going to get TIF from that. We have not received a penny. In fact, we had to lay out that money. And two of the commissioners used to say that we weren't going to take it from our CRA. We did. And we paid for that. Along with that was an enlargement of our CRA for another couple of years, maybe 10 years. That has not happened. So the whole program that was put up a couple of years ago, dealing with the enlargement of the CRA, incorporation of the Fuel Depot, is gone by the wayside. And the county kicked us out of it, and they're not going to get involved with it. So we can't go ahead. When we sunset, we're done. If we keep going the way we're going here, with the amount of money coming out of the trust fund and the amount of money that we're going to spend, we're going to broke. And we're going to have to close down unless we do one of the following. Go to bond, go deeper in debt, and that leads up to, if you're not familiar with this, this is a review of the CRAs in the state of Florida.
Mr. Walker, I'm going to give you a little bit more time because we had Mr. Jenkins talk, but you need to wrap this up. So.
I would suggest you take a look at this, the new laws that are heading down with Florida State on statutes. And Florida statutes do control CRA. So this tells you exactly what the conditions of all CRAs in the state of Florida, and it's bad. It's bad. Some of the programs that we have here are just going to exhaust us tonight. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay. Moving on to the consent agenda. On the consent agenda, we've got item number 3, approval of the minutes, or the meeting minutes from July the 14th, 2020. Item 4, approval of the residential incentive program application for 602 Indiana Avenue. Number 5, approval of the residential incentive program application for 1309 Virginia Avenue, contingent upon completion. Do we have a motion and a second for the consent agenda, or any item that you'd like to take out of the consent agenda?
Can I ask, can we ask questions about it right now, or do you just want to?
My understanding is that to ask a question about one, we would have to pull it out of the agenda without a motion. So if you've got one that you'd like to pull out, you can make a motion to pull it out of the consent agenda.
Yeah, I'm interested in the Virginia Avenue one.
Okay, so you would need to make a motion to have it.
I'd like to make a motion that we pull Virginia Avenue out.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion with the commission? Any discussion with the public? Mrs. Gainer, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Tender?
Yes.
Commissioner Pardo?
Yes.
Commissioner Aldridge?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Russell?
Yes. Item number 5 is moved under the new business. Back to the consent agenda. We still have 2 items on the consent agenda. Item number 3, approval of the meeting minutes for July 14, 2020. Item 4, approval of the residential incentive program application for 602 Indiana Avenue. Do we have a motion and a second?
Motion.
Do we have a second? Any discussion with the commission? Any discussion with the public? Ms. Gainer, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Aldridge?
Yes.
Commissioner Pardo?
Yes.
Commissioner Tender?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Russell?
Yes, motion approved. Moving to item number 5, approval of the residential incentive program application for 1309 Virginia Avenue, contingent upon completion. Do we have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Did you want to discuss? Second for discussion? This is the one that you wanted to talk
Oh,
about.
yes, I'd just like to know about it.
Okay, so we have a,
Yep, sorry,
we have a second for discussion?
second for discussion.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any, discussion with the commission? Go ahead, Mr. Tenney.
Okay, can you explain to me what this is regarding Virginia Avenue?
Mr. Jenkins, would you please give her a report on it?
This is an application that was submitted to the CRA office regarding the residential incentive or regarding the project located at 1309 Virginia Avenue. In basically the same like the incentive application located at 602 Indiana Avenue. The only difference is the house at 602 Indiana is already complete and a development order, a certificate of occupancy was issued last Friday. This one is almost 99% complete. So we're, after talking to the building department, we anticipate them issuing a certificate of occupancy within the next few days. So,
Thank you.
Just so you know, I did question Mr. Jenke about this item and was told that the check will not be issued until a CO has been issued by the county, by the city. Was any other discussion with the commission? Okay, so this is a motion for, it was seconded for discussion. So Ms. Tender, would you be willing to change your second to a approval?
Approval.
All right, so a motion is second for approval. Any other discussion with the commission? Any discussion with the public? Ms. Gainer, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Aldridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Tender,
Yes.
Commissioner Perno,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Russell.
Yes. Item number 5 approved. Under new business. Number 6, discussion and possible action to adopt a tentative CRA budget for the fiscal year 2020-2021. Do we need a motion second, or can we discuss the budget before we do that? I mean, I know normally it's a motion and second, so we need a motion and second. So we have, do we have a motion and a second to approve the budget?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. So now we can have discussion. Do commissioners have any questions for Mr. Jenke, or would you like Mr. Jenke to give you a report on the budget?
I'd like a report.
I'll wait for that.
Mr. Jenke, do you mind?
not at all. So this budget was prepared based on Chapter 189 of the Florida statutes. It highlights or it shows the proposed revenues and expenditures of the CRA for the next fiscal year. Key component really of this budget is the list of projects that we plan to complete within the next fiscal year. And so I've been working with the CRA advisory board on this project list, which you will see on the last page of this agenda report. That identifies exactly what kind of project the advisory board is recommending and how much money we anticipate spending on this project. So, for example, under capital outlay improvements, we're proposing to spend a total of $345,000 on various projects. And if you go back into the budget, you can actually see this under the line item capital improvements, capital outlay improvements, the same number, the $345,000. Obviously, there are additional expenditures in the CRA budget, starting with personnel and then also operating expenditures. And on the top of the budget, you'll see the anticipated revenues that the city, that the CRA should receive, assuming that the city commission and the county commission approve the proposed millage rate that is on the table right now. So,
Anybody in the commission have a question for Mr. Jenkins?
I do.
Yes, ma'am.
I want to go back to the question that Mr. Walker brought up. How much money do you have in the trust fund?
You have the exact number, please?
I would think that would have a lot to do with how much we can.
Go ahead, go ahead.
If you pass the proposed, if you pass the proposed budget as demonstrated in these documents, at the end of next fiscal year, you'll have basically $80,000.
80,000
Yes,
at the end of the year.
Yes, ma'am.
So, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
So it does appear that we're going downhill at the end of the year. And then I have one other question.
Can I respond to that?
Oh, please do.
According to Florida statute, we actually have an obligation to spend money because the CRA is not designed to keep the money in a savings account. I have to spend the money. And if you compare the Lynn Haven CRA to other CRAs in the state, at the beginning of whenever a CRA is implemented or approved by its governing body, it's nothing unusual to issue bonds at that time that the CRA issues bonds so that they can get a lot of cash up front to invest major improvements. This didn't happen here in Lynn Haven because back in 2003, when the CRA was established, the city commission or the CRA board was very conservative with spending. So it's just a different way how you want to implement your CRA projects.
Okay, thank you. And then I had another question because I remember this meeting and down there where you have supplies, sign making, 61,792. I was under the impression that we did not pass that. It passed. You were the only,
We
you and I?
voted no, but it was 3-2.
It was 3-2. Okay, thank you. I just have to say that's still an outrageous amount of money to spend on 12 signs.
Actually, you see this number in this budget because it is a carryover from this fiscal year. I will not be able to complete this project by the end of this month, and therefore I have to roll over or carry over the funds to next fiscal year, and that's why you see a very specific amount there because we have to carry over this purchase order that was issued for this project.
And can I just ask one more question?
Yes.
In 2020, I'm very curious about the $115,000 for operating supplies. What does that include? You're not asking for any of this year
Or in
or next
2020.
year. Mhm.
So
What are those items? Yeah.
okay, so this question pertains to our current budget, not the future budget. The projects that I'm working on right now, most of them are the required funds for those projects are listed under supplies operating, the $115,000. Now you see that there's a difference between for this line item between the 2020 budget and the 2021 budget went down to 0.
Mhm.
While we were preparing this new budget, our finance department pointed out that expenditures for anticipated CRA projects really have to be charged to the capital outlay improvements account. So it's really, we basically shifted the funds over to another account for the budget.
Okay, so they went down to capital outlay.
Correct.
Okay. And I promise this is my last question. Professional services dash other, $90,000. Last year, 10,000 this year. What exactly is that?
Most of the professional services also pertain to anticipated CRA projects. For example, I want to build a sidewalk. I need to know, first of all, exactly where the sidewalk is going to go. I don't want to build it on private property, so I have to hire a surveyor to identify the right-of-way line. And then I have to hire an engineer to draw some plans. Those charges, those expenditures would come out of professional services. The third person I'm hiring is a contractor to actually install the sidewalk. that would be charged under supplies operating, or we used to charge this under supplies operating. Now it's going into capital outlay improvements.
Okay,
If I may follow up, and now the professional fees associated with that item would probably come under capital outlay too, right? That's why that number dropped down, because some of that 90,000 is getting shifted to the 345 as well, correct?
That is my understanding, yes.
Thank you.
and I can see where everything you've got projected for this year is all gonna require professional services. So if the 10,000 doesn't cover it, then you'll just go to the other fund. I mean, everything I see here, like, Florida Avenue, street signs, all of that's gonna require professional services.
Ms. Tender, if I can, my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, those professional fees are now gonna be listed under capital outlay improvement. So if they hire engineering work to do on a project, that money will come out of the capital outlay account.
Okay, so it's really coming out of the 345.
Yes.
So it's just extra up here. We can get rid of that, or does that add up to 345?
There, if some professional services directly apply are directly applied to a specific project that is listed here, then it would go into capital outlay improvements. However, I learned over the years that sometimes the city manager throws projects at me, maybe some that
Or the commission.
or the commission, thank you, that require maybe professional services. And so it's nice to have, instead of going back to the CRA boards mid-year to change the overall budget, it's nice to have a little buffer there in order to maintain this flexibility during the fiscal year. That doesn't mean that I'm going to spend that money next year, but at least I have some funding available in order to implement these smaller projects.
Thank you. And when do we do mid-year? When will we see this again? What month?
Mid-year usually comes around in May.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. Any other discussion with the commission? Any discussion with the public? Mrs. Walker.
I had a question on training certification. Remember a couple of years ago, we allocated between 5,000 and 6,000 for Ben to do some, get his master's, I believe it was at school. I see that last year it was 6,000, this year it's 3,000. Is it still for schooling?
Mr. Jenkins, would you like to explain what the $3,000 is for? Sir?
I don't anticipate signing up for any classes as of right now.
Yes, ma'am.
Under operating expenditures, a PTO buyback of $4,991. I don't know what a PTO buyback is. I've never seen it before on one of our budgets. If it's been there, I have not.
You have not.
Thank
And
you so much.
Kiki, you have not. You are absolutely right. And we're gonna, to be even a little bit more transparent, this is something that we thought we include in this budget year. It has not been, but we thought that we would let you know how we do the PTO buyback in order to get it off the books. And Kiki can
Can you explain why it's?
Yes, ma'am. I sure will.
Go ahead, Ms. Roman.
PTO stands for paid time off. Historically, that would be sick time or vacation. We now go to one category, PTO. PTO buyback for the city's human resources policies and procedures. Every 6 months, those employees who have in excess of 200 hours available to them that they have not used are eligible to convert that into a cash payment. Historically, this has never been budgeted anywhere in the city. It has shown as deficits when people have come to purchase their PTO every 6 months. So what we're trying to do is so that it's not such a big budget hit when someone applies to have those hours paid out, we're going to budget it from now on. We've made the determination that we selected the top 10 employees of the city, one of which just happens to be Ben. So we've included his hours there. If he determines that he isn't going to take PTO for the next year, and he determines that he wants to be paid out for it, that would be the amount of money that he would be compensated. Questions?
You know, I do.
Yeah.
We budgeted $4,991. If he gets to do this twice a year, every 6 months, I assume he gets to take what, 2 pay periods, or 1 pay period, 2 weeks, or you see what I'm saying? How much can he claim every?
That's the
6 weeks,
entire
6
amount
months?
we would owe him for next year if he decides not to take time off during the year.
Okay,
It doesn't take any time at all.
okay.
That's the amount of money that we would owe him, half in 6 months and the second half a year from now.
He can only get up to 80 hours.
That's what I'm asking, 80 hours.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
2 times next year, if he
Correct.
chooses, he can take
Yes, ma'am.
80 hours twice.
No, 80 hours in total.
80 hours.
80
total.
hours, 8 hours every 6 months.
Gotcha, okay. That can't possibly come to 4,000. You're getting paid good. Now, I want your job. $4,900 doesn't,
That's what we
that's,
calculate we owe him right today. So that's what we budgeted. Yes, ma'am. And once we get to the city's budget, you will also see that there are 9 other employees that are included in this. So that
am I
in
making
total,
sense?
Yes, you are.
I am, okay, because I don't understand. If he's gonna get paid for 80 hours, I guess my question is 80 hours, do we pay him
No,
$4,991?
ma'am. So this is budgeted for the entire fiscal year.
Okay,
And so every 6 months, he'll come in and say, he's
Do it
going
twice.
for twice within the fiscal year. And if not, he loses those hours. Or if he decides he wants to leave at some particular time, then we got to pay him all of those. So we're trying to get a lot of that off the books so it doesn't leave the city in a deficit as well. So he can come, say for instance, from in June, he can come in and say, I have 300 hours
Right.
and, I want to get some of those off the books. And so it's 80 hours of 300 hours, which will leave him about 220 hours. And then he can come back in November, December, and do the same thing. So it can only be done twice a year. 2 times in a year.
thank you.
Does that answer?
Kiki, if it alleviates any problems as well, Commissioner Tanner, it's pretty common practice in municipalities and corporations really to buy
I've
that.
done it, yeah,
So,
I've done it. It just seemed like a lot of money for 160 hours, but it's not when you divide it. And then he pays taxes and everything
Yes,
out of it.
exactly. Just like you get a
Paycheck.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, ma'am. Any other discussion with the commission? Mr. Walker?
Are you, Rich Walker, are you working with the amended CRA budget? We're not, because the public has got the old one. There is a noticeable increase in the adjustment of the total at 700,54 rather than 615. So are you working with a new adjustment or are you working with the old?
This has nothing to do with CRs. This is,
So, yeah.
those are capped, that's the $345,000. He's looking at the capital outlay budget. The CRA budget has not changed. There was one adjustment on that
Okay.
page.
I haven't changed at all.
No, sir.
Didn't change.
Any other discussion with the public? I'm gonna need some clarification. Do we have a motion second for passing or was it for discussing?
we're passing and then we discuss.
But so, okay, so we have a motion second, okay. So we're done with the discussion, sorry. City manager, please call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem, I have not read the resolution. Do you?
Oh, I am. Yes, ma'am, if you would, please.
A resolution adopting a tentative budget for the Lynn Haven Community Development Agency for the fiscal year 2020-2021 and appropriating for the purposes specified redevelopment trust fund in amount specified for disbursements according to said budget for the fiscal year 2020-2021.
Mayor Pro Tem,
Yes, ma'am.
would this be inappropriate? I have one more question before we vote. I just want, well, here's my question.
I called the vote, but.
Oh, okay.
But I got out of work, so yes, ma'am, go ahead with your question.
I just want to know that if we vote yes on this budget, will these items come back before us for approval, or are we approving them right now as capital outlay?
You are approving those right now, but remember, we will have another budget hearing on the 23rd. That will be our final budget on the 23rd of this month. So this is our tentative budget, and then we'll come back on the 23rd and have the final budget hearing.
And could there be changes on that one?
There might be some changes. There may be something where you want to add something, and then we will come back with a new budget for that budget hearing.
Thank you.
And that applies to both the city and the CRA.
Thank you.
City Manager, please call the roll.
Commissioner Aldridge,
Yes.
Commissioner Perno,
Yes.
Commissioner Tender,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Russell.
Yes. Item number 5 passes. Item 7, adjournment. So who's our
And
next
that's the
thing?
final.
4:30.
Which is 2 minutes ago.
Yeah, ran into. The next meeting, I'll talk to you.
Go ahead into the bathroom, buddy.
I have mine.
Yeah, I hate for you to do that.
I will just write it like this.